Hello and welcome to How to Make a Dialog Editor with GraphView, episode something. Alright, so last time we made the button, and we made the button, but we haven't done it does anything. However, we need to actually make something into our dialog container. The dialog container OS, as I was, because we actually need to save some data. And let me just first check my notes. Alright, here we go. So we actually need to make this serializable. Why haven't we done that? Serializable. There we go. Beautiful. Alright, so we need to make another class that we're going to call dialog node port. Alright, there we go. And we're also going to make that serializable. System command system dot serializable. There we go. Alright, so this port needs to know this. By the way, this is actually the save information we are going to save. So when we are saving and loading, this is the information. So for each port, we are adding and we are making a dialog node that we can choose how many ports there actually is in the dialog node. So therefore, we also have to tell it. We also have to save how many we actually have of it. So here we're going to save that. If that makes sense. Like we're going to make the blueprint for saving it. So first we need the input, like gun of the input it is connected to, and we need the output, so we know which it is, which the port is connected to and which it is not connected to. No, we need the input and output connection. I hope that makes sense. And then we need the port. Oh, alright, so we don't have a reference for the port. Oh, we're gonna add the GraphView reference. And this was the reference I was adding. And we're just gonna call it my port. And we also need a text field. We have the reference for that. I don't think we have. So let's see. There we go. And that is this reference right here. And we are just going to call it a text field. Then we need, we actually need our language generator because each port will contain the dialog choice you're going to choose. So each port will then have a text field in it where you put in the information for the choice you want the player to do. So we are going to make a list for each language. That is language generate. Let generate generics, and it is of course a string we're going to save. And we're just gonna call it text language. Language, there we go. And we're just gonna make a new one, so it's already ready to be used when it's made. We're going to save that. So now we have this ready to go. Let me fast check my notes. Alright, so now we need to go to the dialog node. Where do we have that one? I think let's just pin those two for now. Alright, so now we need to go in here, and we need to make this one public, and it needs to return a path. It's because later on, when we actually coming to the part where we need to save and load, we can use, instead of making an entire new method, we are just going to reuse the same method. I hope that makes sense. Gonna go port, and here we go. Alright, so in its parameter, we need to tell it which node it's going to be using. So we're gonna go base node underscore. And we also want it to be able to actually give a dialog node. So a dialog node, a node port, meaning if we, meaning that we can, that it will be able to, when we make an empty one, it will just make an empty one and it will make one on its own. However, if it is not empty, it will then reuse the one. It will use the one we are giving it instead. All right. So now let's make our port, and we're gonna simply name that port equals get port instant, and this is of course a out. Actually, we can. Yeah, we need just to get a. Sorry, my bad. I lost my train of thought. And that is port dot no. I think I forget. No, it's direction we need to get. Ah, my bad. And out. There we go. Right, so now we are making a port that is that knows it's the output port. All right. So now we also need to find a number of actually finding out how many ports is already. Let's call it already in this current node or for self. The reason why we're doing that is simply just to find out what number we should give it. In the end, it doesn't really matter that we have the specific thing, but it just helps. So we are now going to no, going to look through all the ports. There we go, and making it to lists. And we're going to count it afterwards. Oh, did I spell that wrong? Or do we need a reference? We need a reference. There we go. Alright, so it will then go inside the output container and check how many ports we have. And again, this is a GraphView function. Alright, so we are then going to make a string. We are gonna call out port name. We've got probably port and then name. Output port name. Yeah, there we go. And we are going to let's actually use the dollar sign. That means we can then make curly brackets inside. So we can go output name count +1. The reason why you go +1 is because it always starts in 0. So the first one it has is then 0, and then yeah. So let's just call it choice, and then 1. So if there's one port, if there's no port, it's just gonna call it choice 1, and then choice 2 and choice 3. Alright. Now we actually need to make a dialog editor, or a dialog node port. We're just gonna call the dialog node port, and that's equals a new one. Actually, yeah, let's make it so we could actually first check if this is empty, and if it is not empty, we can put it in. However, if we add new languages later on, the system will not be able to add the new language into it, so we're gonna do so on a later date. You should be able to add new languages into the system. So we're gonna work with the assumption that later on you're gonna add more languages. So first we need to go through and check out the languages. If I can again spell this correctly. Language type. And that is of course just, let's just take language. Call it language. And then again, we need to do this kind of funky version of get all the values of the enum. And we need to get the type of what enum we want, and it is of course language type. However, we also need to make sure that it is the language type it is being cast as. And again, remember, it is we want it back as an array, so make sure you make the array at the end. And there we go. That means that we'll now go through each type. So if you go into the destination, you can see we'll go through English, German, and Danish. And then for each of them, we are going to go dialog, dialog node. There we go. Dot text, text language, and dot add. And here we are of course going to add a new text language string. And in here, should we add it? Yeah, let's add it on a new line just so it's easier to read. There we go. Where we're going to say language equals to language, and of course the language generic type is equals to our output name here. So in the beginning it's just going to be choice 1. That's fine for us. Then that is also a way for us to check if we actually added something, and also to make sure that something is added to the choice button later on. Alright, so next up we want to check if our current dialog is empty or not. So if it isn't empty, we of course wanted to tell which input nodes it has. So we are going to do that. And again, this with the input GUI, also where we tell it which node it belongs to, is simply because when we are loading it in later, when we are making the loading function, it needs that info to be able to load the correct ones. Oh, forgot that. There we go. So when we get to the saving and loading part, we have already set this up, so we don't need to go back and add those later on. So we already made this, so we don't have to go back and make it later, of course. And let's see here. And this is the language generic string type. And we're gonna go through each of the language jot text languages. Let's just call it language generic. I think that's be the easiest thing to call it. Alright, so we will be going through, instead of making another loop, we're just gonna go text language dot find, where let's just say language. Now we're gonna do a Lua expression dot language type equals language generic dot language type. So if those are equal to each other, we are going to say language generic equals this might be a language generic dot language generic type. Might be a little confusing with those names. Alright, so let's just go through what we did here. First we're taking the one we already made here. So up here we made all the different language generics and then added them into our dialog node prods. So they are already ready to go. So down here, if the one we are loading in it will then go through each of the one it is loaded in and put the correct text into the correct language. So it's gonna say, alright, if Danish equals Danish, then put the Danish text into the Danish text. And if it is English equals English, then put the English text into the English text. So that's pretty much what it does. Alright. So now we actually need to make the field itself where, what's it called? Yeah, the text field where we can actually save it. However, the text field is actually made inside the dialog node. So this way we always know where the specific text field is, so we can always reference it later on. We're simply just gonna go text field equals new text field. So we can pretty much just copy this line here because it's going to be reused a couple of times now. So we are just going to make sure that every time it is changed, we of course want the text to change itself. So we are going to, oh, wrong one. Go. This is just text, so we're gonna go, the text is changed. Oh, let's just say value. It is a value. If the value is changed, let's go on next line so it's more readable. Here we go. So if the dialog dot language dot find, oh, let's see. So we want it to check what language it is before it actually save it. So we want to go language. Because now we need to find out which language it is before we actually save it. So we're gonna go language dot language type equals editor dot language type. And if that is the right one, we're gonna go. And if it is the right correction, if English is English, we will of course want it to save the new value. The value dot new value into the text. So what we're doing here is that each time our value is changed, it will go and look into the languages and say, hey, alright, what language is it right now? So we'll go through all the languages and say, oh, if it is English, then it is the English text you're going to change. So you're going to take that new text we added it into the English if English is selected. Alrighty. Then we are going to, of course, set the value. That is again this beautiful line of dot find. Oh no. Oh, that's dot language dot find. Can I just copy this line actually? Plug it in. I think there's one too many here. Did that go? It seems so. Alright, so let's just make sure we did it correctly. We have the dialog node, its text field, we are setting its value. We're telling the value is our dialog node port's language, language text. And finding out, we're checking what language it is. First, if it's English, we wanted to set it to English language. Alright, so that seems about right. Goody goody. Alrighty. Let's see. Alright, so next up, let's actually add some green text here and just go text for the part. Might need to change that later. And then we need a delete button. Now we also want the the possibility of going, oh, I don't need more choices, so I want a button to delete those choices. We're gonna go button and just call it remove. I literally called it delete button over, so we're just gonna call it delete button. Equals new button. Alright. How are we gonna do this? And let's just do this. So text is equals, let's just say a big beautiful cross thing, and then on clickable. I actually can't remember how you add that into a button. It's just clickable. Oh yeah, we actually haven't made the delete delete port, I guess. Alright, so let's just add this. Then go plus equals. I think it's like this. Now I can't remember. Oh, let me just check my notes. Oh, that is an interesting way of doing it. Alright. So I have some notes telling me to do it. Wait. Alright. So they want it to be in here instead. Like this. I actually didn't know you could do that. But apparently you are adding the click event right here. Alright, thank you notes. Alright, so now we actually need to get our hands on the button again, or the port. We're gonna go port. Dot. Oh, if I could spell, that would be really nice. Container. Dot add. We're going to add the delete button. Oh yeah, we forgot to add this one up here. Add that. Container. Dot add. And go. That must be the text field here. Go. Alrighty. So let me just fast check my notes. Let's just put that one up there so it's connected. Interesting. Alright, so we need to go dialog dot myport equals port. So now we are also saving the current port into the dialog port. It's so we can delete it. So when we delete it, it knows which port to actually delete. Because each port will have a unique port. However, when we tell it to delete the port, we also need to tell it wants to delete this port and not the other ports. There are lots of you also need to delete the strings that connects the ports, the nodes. So it will be using this port to actually find the correct edge string between each node and delete that one as well. And I hope that makes sense in any kind of way. So we actually need to move the port over here as well. So we are going to say which node it is. We're gonna go, oh, that's not here. We're gonna go base, if I could spell it correctly, base node, and go just node, and then we need to go pod, and simply call it pod. So we're telling it which node it is, so we're just gonna call it, did we actually announce which is the base node? Did we do that? Oh yeah, we're gonna get that from up here. So we're just gonna go base node dot that must be the pod. So now we're telling it which node it belongs to, which pod it's supposed to delete. Of course, we're then going to do the map down here for it afterwards. But let's continue making the rest of the dialog node finish, or the add choice finish. Alright, so let me quick check my notes. Alright, now we also need to give the node axle, or the port axle name. It's called port name. I actually don't want it to have a name, so we're just gonna say it doesn't have a name, like this. Alright, and then we actually need to add at the dialog. See dialog. Oh, actually don't think we have made that in the tab, have we? Let me just quick check my notes. No, we haven't. We need to make a list inside the node that contains all the node pods. So we're gonna go all the way in the tab. And I'm just gonna make some space because this is it's not something the pod has, but it's how will I say that? It's something different from the other values here. So we're just gonna call it dialog pods equals new dialog node pods. We're of course going to make a property. Click, here we go, and we have the property. So that way the dialog node will then have a list of all the dialog node pods, and we will then be able to find them easily and do what we want with them, get the data out of them, or delete them, or riff them. Bleh. Yeah, that. So we're of course going to add it into that list. There we go. Right, I gotta check my notes fast again. Alright. Now we of course would like to add the pod. I'm gonna go base node dot output container dot add, and add of course the pod we wanna add. So we added the pod, and after we add it, we also want to refresh. So let's just go refresh. I can't spell for my life apparently. There we go, refresh. I think that's spelled correctly. So we're gonna go base node dot refresh. Come on, refresh pods. Oh, that's the method. And we are also going to refresh. I am pronouncing things correctly right now. I am there. Refresh this one here. There we go. So now we have refreshed it all, and then of course at Deletion we need to return the pod itself. So there we go. Now we have made this large and beautiful function. Let me just take my notes that we didn't forget anything. So we have the pod, my name, the add function. Are we also adding this correctly? Yeah, I think we did it. Yep. All right. Well, now we need to do the delete function. So first, we need to find out which dialog node. I could spell this correctly. Dialog node pod we are working with. I'm just gonna call it TMP because it's a temporary. So we are going to look for it in a define function. So we're gonna go port where port equals the port with my port is equals the port we are getting. Yeah, and this is why we made this beautiful thing in front of it. Now we can do this. There we go. So now it will find our correct dialog node port, so we get all the information simply just by recognizing this port here. Beautiful. And of course this is the delete function, showing of course going to go dialog node ports dot remove and then add the TMP into it. So we're going to remove it. However, we also need to check for all the connecting edges that goes into it. So we're gonna go enum dot edge and we're just gonna call that let's see, let's just call it port edge. I could spell correctly again. I can't spell. Why can't I spell? There we go. That is of course equals the graph view dot edges. Oh. Dot to list. Alright, so we are going into the graph view and looking for all the edges inside graph view, and we're making it to a list. And now we need to find the one. So we're gonna go where, and we of course need to find our edge. So we're gonna go edge. I could spell again. Dot output is equals hot. Alright, so what are we doing here? We are looking through our graph view edges, making it to a list, and then we are telling it we only want the ones that has the same output. Its output is actually the port it is connected to. So we want the same port that is, we only want the port, the edges that had the same output port as the port we are connecting, that we are trying to remove. Because we want to remove all the edges that is connected to this port. So after that, we are of course going to say, are there any ports that's actually connected to this one? Because we don't really want to remove any if there isn't any. So if there is any, we're going to tell edge equals port edge dot first, and simply going edge dot input dot disconnect. So we are disconnecting the edge. And my phone is ringing now. I'm just gonna ignore it. I'm sorry, I'm recording. And graph view dot remove element, because we also want to remove the edge element. All right. So we are finding. No, let's actually just disconnect both of them to be sure. So we are going to find the first the ones here, and then we are disconnecting them for both places, and then after that we are removing the edge itself. And after that, we of course want to go. Let me just check my notes. We also want to remove the socket itself. So we are going to say node dot output container dot remove. Why can't I spell remove? remove underscore port. So now we also want to remove the port itself. And after that, we're of course going to refresh it again. And I'm lazy, so I'm just gonna copy paste this up here. And that is of course not gonna work. There we go. So let's just go through what we did here fast. First, we are getting the current node and the port it's connected to. And then we are then going into our Dialog node ports inside this, of course, node and finding the specific ports. The port that is equal to the same port as this. Then we are removing it from the list because we know we are going to remove it. In theory, we should probably remove it later down the line, but in the end, it doesn't really matter. Then we are then going into our graph view and finding all the edges. It means all the lines that connect to different nodes, and the ones that are connected to this port, we then want all of them to disconnect and be removed because we don't need them anymore, because we are literally removing the port. And after that, we are of course removing the port itself, and we are refreshing the whole system to so it is visible that we have removed them. Alright, I think that is it for now. So thank you for watching.